And it's time to talk Everton once again this afternoon. I'm delighted to say that Roger Armstrong is with us on the line. Roger is a lifelong Blue who contributes to a number of podcasts on Everton Football Club. It's been a while, Roger, since we last spoke, but thank you for joining us today. And I know you're not on Merseyside this afternoon. Hopefully you're managing to stay dry and warm wherever you are today.
Yeah, I'm down on the south coast, Paul, and it's a bit blowy, but I think it's not quite as blowy as it is there on the Wales and the northwest of England. Seems to be having the worst of it. So yeah, not much chance of the game going ahead, was there? In all likelihood.
Yeah, this is it. I mean, clearly disappointing that the game doesn't go ahead, but I think bearing in mind the conditions here on Merseyside, definitely the right decision. Possibly a decision that maybe should have been made last night.
I think it would have been an easy one to make last night. But to be fair, I suppose, when was it? About 8:30 that it was known publicly. So most people that were travelling, if you're travelling up from the south, you wouldn't have 12:30 kickoff, not ideal. But yeah, it was an inevitable decision. It's a shame. But I think there are some positives. And I think the positives for Everton in this, a postponement means, A, we haven't lost to Liverpool. So that's good yet. And B, I suspect that when the game is replayed, it's likely to be in the evening, so, under the lights at Goodison. That seemed to work well against Wolves midweek. We may touch on that. And also, I think for this to be the last ever derby at Goodison, it seems wrong for it to be a 12:30 kickoff. It's just not a football time. So ultimately, I think, for it to get rearranged sometime in March, April under the Goodison lights probably plays to Everton's favour more than the Reds.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think a lot of Evertonians sharing your view on that. I'm going to ask you, Roger, about your memories of the Merseyside derby at Goodison as well, because, of course, much has been said about the fact that this is the last Merseyside derby, barring, of course, any potential FA Cup games or whatever. But in relation to your memories of the Merseyside derbies at Goodison, what really stands out for you?
Well, an FA Cup one, obviously. I mean, it has to be for me. My favourite Merseyside derby, unbelievably, is one that we didn't win, but it was a 4-4 FA Cup replay in 1991. We came from behind 4 times, went into extra time. Tony Cottee scored 2, I believe, coming off the bench, in fact. I went to a second replay, because back in the day they had second replays, and the second replay was one, they tossed a coin, and that second replay was also at Goodison the following midweek, as I remember, and we beat the Reds 1-0. Dave Watson with a header, if I recall. This is 1991. And the other reason it's memorable is because it was the last game Kenny Dalglish was in charge of Liverpool. There was stories of a dressing room bust up thereafter with the defence shipping 4 goals. A bit of a row with Bruce Grobbelaar, and he left after that game. So that would be my favourite absolute game, was that 4-4, for the theatre and the drama of it. But I also loved Joe Royle's first game in charge as manager, November 1994. He'd taken over from the ill-fated Mike Walker, probably the worst Everton manager ever, certainly stats-wise. And his first game in charge was a Merseyside derby. We won 2-0, and there was an iconic header at the Gladys Street end, Duncan Ferguson from an Andy Hinchcliffe corner. And we went on that season to win the FA Cup in 1995, talking of which 2 All Merseyside FA Cup finals, of course, in 86 and 89. Didn't go to the first one, but did go to the second, which was obviously iconic in its own right, coming after the Hillsborough tragedy in the semi-final. And remember that final vividly, although it wasn't at Goodison Park. It was a derby, but not at Goodison Park. So yeah, there's a few derby memories for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy memories. I'm also reminded as well, Roger, about the 1967 FA Cup 5th round tie at Goodison, which Everton beat Liverpool 1-0. And at that time, Everton were the current FA holders. They'd won the FA Cup the previous season. Liverpool were the current league holders after winning the league that previous season. And of course, it was the year after England had won the World Cup in 1966, and Roger Hunt paraded the World Cup trophy at Goodison during that game as well. But demand for tickets was so high that Liverpool took the what was then a huge decision, a mind-blowing decision, to erect 8 giant screens inside Anfield and actually transmit live coverage of the tie from Goodison, which was quite something, bearing in mind this was 1967. 65,000 watched the game inside Goodison, 40,000 watched the game at Anfield, and it remains the biggest audience for a single FA Cup tie outside of a final. Maybe a little bit before our time, but Everton beating Liverpool 1-0 in 67, and as you can imagine, demand for tickets absolutely huge.
Sure, yeah, I would have been 3, so just a little bit before my memory kicked in, I'm afraid. But yeah, it sounds like a great occasion, and obviously the right result. And those poor old folk who turned up to Anfield and saw the Reds lose. Yeah, they don't often lose these days, so we have to take most of our solace from history rather than more recent results, I'm afraid.
Absolutely. And of course, had the derby gone ahead today, Everton would have come into that derby on the back of that 4-0 win over Wolves, as you say, on Wednesday night. How do you assess, Roger, what we saw from Everton midweek?
It's very difficult to, isn't it, Paul? I mean, no idea where that performance came from, because it was the exact opposite, really, of the dreadful performance put in at Old Trafford the weekend before. Really lacklustre and shipping 4 goals on that occasion. We'd gone four games without even scoring a goal. And the team was largely unrecognisable. I mean, the football wasn't great. It wasn't superbly entertaining and skillful and dynamic and quick, but boy, was it effective. 3 goals from set pieces, some wonderful crosses, 2 from Dwight McNeil, which led to the 2 unfortunate own goals. And of course, Ashley Young, the star of the show. Little known fact about Ashley Young, seeing as well, doing a bit of stato. Ashley Young is not only Everton's oldest outfield player, he's also the oldest Everton player ever to be sent off. And following that goal from the free kick at the Park End to open the scoring against Wolves, he's Everton's oldest ever goal scorer. So, yeah, Ashley Young gets his place in history. I thought it was very encouraging, if only we could repeat it, because it stands out, as an anomaly in recent form. I thought Mangala made a great difference in midfield. I thought Tarkowski was back to his best, having had a really ropey start to the season. And I thought Pickford was reliable as ever, because at 1-0 he made a couple of really good saves. And, this Everton team's a bit fickle, a bit fragile, and if they were to concede one and Wolves had got a goal back, who knows where it would have gone. But yeah, we'll take 4-0 wins every day of the week.
Absolutely. And also a better performance as well from Dominic Calvert-Lewin midweek. And also encouraging as well to see Brozier back in the side. He came on for the last 10 minutes of the game. But again, he played well, didn't he?
Yeah, I think Brozier can offer something. It's a question of keeping him fit. He's a big, robust forward who you think can hold the ball up and be a problem for defenders. Calvert-Lewin did well. You're quite right. He threw his head in very bravely on a number of occasions, put his body on the line, and was unlucky, not to get on the end of those 2 crosses and for them to result in 2 own goals. So maybe there are some options coming at the top end of the pitch, because, as you'll know, and the listeners will know, scoring goals has been a real problem for Everton recently, not just this season, but going back, 2, 3, 4 seasons, getting the ball in the net has been a real problem.
And maybe that result just temporarily take some of the pressure away from Sean Dyche. Sean Dyche has been reflecting on the season so far, Roger, and he said that he believes that they've done better than the points show, and he says he doesn't think that there are major frustrations in the group other than to deliver better than what we are doing. Sean Dyche clearly has a belief that he and his players together can turn around their fortunes this season. Clearly that was just one game that we saw on Wednesday. But does that result or does that performance give you any indication or belief that maybe Everton can begin to turn around their fortunes?
Look, I think there's a number of different schools of thought, but over the course of this season, I think probably the majority of the fan base are really disillusioned with Dyche and have had enough of some of his sort of comments pre-match and post-match, blaming the fans, being a bit nervous, the stadium's on edge and we're doing our best. And he comes out with some funny statistics. He said that, before the Wolves game, he said, we only had 4 points this time last season. It's not strictly true. We actually had 14 and then had 10 deducted. So he's playing the numbers a bit, playing games with the media, and I think the fans are becoming a bit disenchanted. The second school of thought, then, is whether this squad should be doing better. I would argue they should, but not dramatically so. I think we are a 14th, 15th team. Some people think we should be maybe pushing into the top half. I don't think the squad's that good. And it's going to be a challenge for the Friedkins when they come in, whether they decide to stick with Dyche or twist. The story is there's some cost to terminate his contract early, albeit only runs out at the end of this season. You'd like to think that Southampton are pretty much certain to go down. But then you're looking at Ipswich, you're looking at Leicester who've bitten the bullet and changed manager, Wolves who are likely to change manager soon, and Palace who, as we speak, are beating Man City. So, there's it's a bit tricky. Ipswich maybe should go down as well, but I'm not sure we can rely on there being three teams worse than us unless we can start playing better football and actually scoring more goals. So I think it's going to be a challenge for the Friedkins as and when they come in as to whether they stick with Dyche or not, and to what degree they invest in the squad in the January window, because I think we do need more resources.
And actually, in terms of Dyche's future, he was asked again before the Wolves game about the errors that he has made as Everton boss this season. And his reply, Roger, was that he has made tactical errors and sometimes he's not picked the right team. And he says that contributes to their poor run of form. Now, he says he's still trying to crack the code, but of course, only time will tell how long he's going to be given to crack that code, if indeed he can.
Yeah, I think the problem now for him is early on when he came, it was fine to say he'd inherited a poor squad and the club's in crisis. And that, we have been a basket case of the club. And last season in particular, he was very good as a front man, very, very good in front of the media, answering questions about more than just footballing matters, and far too much pressure to put on him. So a lot of sympathy and a good deal of gratitude to him for what he did last season. It was a tremendous job, with the points deductions to keep us up quite comfortably. And without them, we would have finished 48 points and comfortably mid-table. Now, this season we aren't kicking on. So 48 points is the benchmark, not the total that we had with the points taken off. And I think that's where the fans are slightly frustrated with him. So this cracking the code business, we don't see much flexibility. We don't see creativity in formations. His substitutions are like for like, and they're often quite late in games. He has his favourites. He's always picking Dwight McNeil, and he's always picking Doucouré, and he's always picking Tarkowski. And I'm not sure he has it in him to play any differently. And the players seem a little bit, bored, not necessarily committed, because frankly, I don't think the formation suits the best that they can offer.
And of course, Everton do have players now coming back from injury, and we saw that result against Wolves on Wednesday. But in terms of the January transfer window, some Evertonians, for the reasons you've just given, will say, well, look, this squad needs to be strengthened. But again, Dyche has said that he and his team are working hard to see what business they can do in January. But I think we should point out, shouldn't we, that, the new owners, they're not going to sanction significant spending on players in January because of profit and sustainability restrictions, and that supporters who possibly believe that big spending will happen come the new year, they're going to be disappointed, aren't they?
Well, yeah, I don't think we're going to be splashing huge amounts of cash, but I think they will find some money. And I think the scouting networks they have perhaps may allow them to identify some lower cost options and maybe a few selective loans. I think also from what we hear, they're going to look at refinancing a good deal of the debt which they inherit. And if they can do that at lower interest rates, that will have a positive impact on PSR too. So there may be a bit more wiggle room. I think it's not always about money. It's about it's about how you spend it, not how much you spend. And, we're not going to be competing for the 40, 50, 60 million pound players, but there are bargains out there if you've got a good scouting network. And indeed, of course, if you're developing talent through your own academy, which we've been quite rubbish at of late.
And in terms of what's to come this month, we know December is going to be a very difficult month with games against Arsenal, Chelsea and Manchester City to come. Everton next back in action away at Arsenal this time next Saturday. Have you got any expectations, Roger, as to what Everton are going to achieve this month in terms of points or results, or is it just a case of just seeing how well they can do?
Well, on another podcast that I do with the Blue Room on a Monday, I said 7 points over these fixtures, which started with Wolves, but then the one with Man United and the one before that we got a draw against Brentford. So I did say 7 points. So we've got 4 So we need to get a win, and that's probably going to come from Forest at home, I would say, in my books. Nothing doing at Arsenal, I can't see. I mean, it'd be a miracle if we got anything there. Chelsea at home. Chelsea are probably one of the most attacking teams in the division, very dangerous, so many options, great wide players, good goal scorer in Jackson. City away, nothing doing, although historically we had a good record there. Kim Cahill would pop up with a header every now and again, but you can't really expect us to produce much. I'm being realistic because I hate that expected losses phrase, but let's be realistic. So, yeah, let's pick up 3 points against Forest, and hopefully, not playing today, results of the other teams go our way. They do play each other, though. Ipswich, Leicester, Wolves, West Ham, they're all playing each other in the next sequence of matches when we have tough fixtures. So it's going to be interesting to see where the table looks come Christmas.